What's up guys, my name is Julian, your solar expert, and today I'm going to be comparing two of the top solar panels in the residential solar panel market, the REC Alpha Series 420 watt and the QCELLS QTRON 425 watt. Now, a lot of people are kind of confused about what all these specs mean, or maybe they don't know about any of these specs at all. Maybe they just know about the wattage rating, how one is 420, one's 425, and that's all they know, and maybe they don't even really know what that really means. But I'm going to be clearing up what all of these stats mean that help you understand if a solar panel is good or not. Now, earlier in the year, I made a list of the top solar panels on the market in general, but these are two of the very top solar panels, and the QTRONs wasn't even on that list originally. So I wanted to just do a head-to-head comparison between REC Alpha Series, a proven panel that has been a top dog in the industry for several years now. It's won multiple awards, and I've sold, at this point, thousands of them, and with a perfect track record. I've never even seen one fail. And QCELLS, they are the largest company in terms of market share for the residential solar panel market. And you know, the QTRON is their attempt to make a top tier panel. They've had the best bang for their buck value proposition for a long time. They've never had the best panel, but they've always had one of the best panels for the money. But now with solar panel pricing coming down over the years, they've realized that, hey, we need to come out with a super high-end panel for the residential market because people, they want the best of the best for their house. So with that being said, here are two of the top solar panels, and I'm going to be going through a head-to-head comparison and showing you why maybe something like the efficiency spec isn't everything. So let's get started. All right, so starting with the STC, this is the standard test condition wattage rating, and this is the nameplate DC wattage rating that whenever we talk about the panel wattage, this is the rating that we're talking about. And so the STC standard test condition rating, this is when the panel is in an ideal state, which is not on the roof. What I mean by ideal state is it's not basically 130, 140 degrees baking in the sun on your roof. Any electronic, like obviously computers is a one that we all know, like a lot of them have fans to cool them down if they get hot. Solar panels don't have any fans, and as they get hot, the cells will not convert the light to electricity as well. So some panels actually do better in the heat. If we look at this NMOT, this stands for nominal module operating temperature, which is more in the real world what the panel is really rated to output. So you can see that this is a whole 100 watts less. Over here about the same, a little more than 100 watts less than the STC rating. Now, this is a more real world expectation for what you can see in terms of what this panel will output. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to get more than 320. There are times when both of these panels in ideal conditions will produce more than this NMOT rating. But given you have normal conditions where it's very hot up on the roof, when the solar panel may be 10, 20, 30, 40 degrees hotter than the outside ambient temperature, this NMOT is a much better indicator of what you can really expect to see in terms of panel output. Now, still, if we compare head to head, both of these are very, very close so far. We have 420, 425, and then 320, 321.4. Both very close. And that's because at the end of the day, I like to make the comparison that really we're kind of comparing like the Mercedes AMG to a BMW M series. You know, these are both top contenders, which is why these specs are very close. Now, the efficiency rating is the one that most people know, and they look at like, hey, what's the efficiency of the solar panel? And, you know, ironically here, we can see that in this case, the REC has a 0.4% less efficiency than the QTRON, and that's interesting. I don't claim to be an engineer that understands everything to the point where it's like, you know, I don't have questions anymore. I still have lots of questions, and so what I'm going to get to in a second when I get down to like the power density makes me question this efficiency spec. And but on paper at least, the QTRON claims to be 0.4% better in terms of efficiency, which is ultimately how well the light is converted to electricity. You could say 21.8% of the light is converted to electricity and 22.2% of light is converted to electricity. That's ultimately what the efficiency means. The other really important spec that you should know about, and this is what differentiates very high quality panels like these two options here versus a lot of the lower end panels or like the mid-grade panels is the degradation. Now, these panels are both warranted over a 25-year period to output only 8% down from year one, so 92% of year one. And still very amazing, the QCELLS is guaranteed to produce over 90.6% or 90.6% of year one production, which both of these specs are amazing. There's a lot of panels that are in the 80s, and while that still at the end of the day is very impressive for something that's going to perform over a 25-year period, this is something that when people are asking about like, hey, well, like what if I have to replace these panels in a few years? Like, isn't this going to be obsolete in a few years? And the answer is simply no, because if the solar panel is still producing electricity at pretty much a similar efficiency as what it did maybe 10, 15, 20 years before, then you can make the argument that there's no point to replace it. Maybe the battery or the controller is going to have some more updated features or technology to manage the system, but in terms of the solar panel, you're just kind of collecting energy for the system. It's just kind of like the sail of the sailboat, if that's kind of a good analogy. So these solar panels really are going to last 25, 30, potentially longer, longer than the warranty because of the cells now being so good in terms of degradation. Okay, so the temperature coefficient. Now, this is an underrated spec that a lot of people don't really know about, but really is one of the most important because this is going to tell us how well the panel really produces when it gets up on the roof and it's hot, similar to why the NMOT ratings here are much lower than the STC ratings. This a lot has to do with the temperature difference. Here is where things get a little bit interesting, and while these numbers here on the temp coefficient line seem to probably be similar, they're a little bit different. And so what this means here, let me clear this up and put this into English for everyone. So what this means is when the panel is 112 degrees, that is where this test begins. And so if it were 113 degrees, then it would be performing at 0.24% less than the temperature before. So as it gets hotter, the efficiency rating goes down. Basically, you'd add a minus 0.24% to the efficiency rating. So this matters because a lot of the time the panel is much hotter than even 112 degrees when it's up on your roof. This isn't the temperature for when it's outside. This is the actual temperature of the panel itself. Over here, and by the way, it's like golf here. You want a lower score. So a lower score is better. So minus 0.24 is better than minus 0.30. You want to be closer to 0. So, and another thing that's important about this is that they start their temperature range lower, 3 degrees lower. So they are basically saying that you're still going to reach a normal operating performance 3 degrees hotter with the REC. And this is why the REC, in my opinion, is the best for Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, like the southern regions, like the desert regions, because it gets very hot. And so you want a panel that's not going to get too bogged down in the heat. Now, I know that I'm probably exaggerating the difference here because, like I said, and I want to emphasize, at the end of the day, both of these panels are top of the line, but this is where I think the REC really shines. So a little bit better to combat the heat. The REC Alpha Series is the best in the whole market in terms of temperature coefficient ratings. Okay, great. So now let's talk about dimensions, because this also comes back to this STC rating and these watt ratings. Something to kind of understand is in the last several years, all the manufacturers have been racing to have the highest watt ratings possible, because most people that don't really understand all these specs, they just kind of think, hey, the highest watt rating is best. So how you achieve that without adding more efficiency and technology that's going to make the panel actually more power dense, which I'm going to explain here in just a second, is you just keep making the panel bigger and bigger and bigger. It used to be that most panels were 60 cell panels, which were about 3 feet wide by 5 feet tall. All these panels now are at least 66 cells, which means that they've added a row of cells on top to increase the surface area. And the reason that's important here is because if we look at the dimensions, one panel, the REC, is slightly taller but a little bit more narrow, and vice versa with the QTRON. And at the end of the day, if you add up the total surface area, the QTRON's slightly larger. Now the reason why that's all important is because when we're calculating the power density, which is really what the watt rating is, and I use the NMOT, which is the real world watt rating, if we take the size factor out of the equation and we figure, really, okay, if we just take a 1 square foot sample of each panel and we figure out how much really it's going to produce or how many watts it can produce, these numbers down here in green are the figures. So really, even though all the watt ratings are less, maybe even the efficiency on paper is less, but you have some better specs here. When we factor in real world NMOT and per square foot production, 15.96 watt per square foot versus 15.37 watts per square foot, which means that the REC is more power dense. All right, thank you so much for watching. I actually work in over 30 states, so if you found this video helpful and you want a quote on any of these two panels or the RECs, which I know I have almost everywhere, reach out. Please give me a call, 760-473-5878. I'm here to help you out. And here's a map of all the states I cover, so if you're in one of these green states, don't hesitate to reach out. I hope that I can add more value than any of the other salespeople you've been talking to. All right, thank you so much once again.